Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing? How is everybody doing? Today I wanted to discuss some policies that, if I were in power in South Africa, I would put into place, because we've spoken in great length about what's not working in South Africa, how things are bad in South Africa. And as you can imagine, that being a critic does not necessarily make you a person who is qualified to know what's needed. It also doesn't necessarily mean that you have good ideas. It just means that you're a critic. Everyone is a critic. Being a critic is very easy. It's a very cheap skill to have. Yeah, so I don't put in much value on people who find other people's flaws, which is why I made a video, if you remember, about that Democratic Alliance Member of Parliament, Liam Jacobs, saying that he's not necessarily your salvation, based on the fact that, among other things, he has no experience in the real world. He has never had a job. As far as I know, he hasn't told us what his policies would be if he were to be in power. And pointing out to corruption is not a sign that you yourself are competent. Yeah, so that's so I wanted to look first in the next couple of videos. I'm going to look at the energy policies that I would, or just let's not even call it policy, energy policies, actions that I would take if I were to be in government. And these actions will result in, at least taken together, I think I'm going to make like 3 videos. They'll result in at least 1% economic growth that being added to the South African economy. And looking at the fact that the South African economy right now has an economic growth of 0.4%, 1%, adding 1% to the economy right now would actually be a miracle. So, and then further on, later on at some stage, later on maybe in the year, I will talk about what other policy actions I would take then that could add another 1%, which together would be 2% economic growth. And looking in terms of where the South African economy is right now and where it has been in the past 6-10 years, 2% economic growth would be considered exceptional performance. And is it close? Is it sufficient for what we need? No, it's not even close to being sufficient. But it would be a vector in the right direction, and it will add, in my estimation, these policy actions that I'm going to discuss will add more than 100,000 direct jobs. But actually, what we need in the next 5 years or so, we actually need to add at least 500,000 jobs. And in the next 10 years, we need to add at least 2 million jobs. That's really what's needed. But with that being said, let's go into it. Okay, folks. So where are we? Energy. So these are the things that I've been looking at energy policies around the world, looking at people who have done the right thing, have had good policies on this, all over the world, looking at Europe, looking at the US, looking at Australia, and looking at people who have gotten this energy thing correctly. And the one thing for me that would be a low-hanging fruit would be to build 2 large nuclear power stations in South Africa. which would actually, essentially, those two nuclear power stations would mean that South Africa would never have load shedding again for at least another 30 to 50 years. And I'm gonna just lay the factual basis for that. I'm just gonna use some power stations that we have right now as a basis of what to expect. Look, for instance, the Koeberg nuclear power station, which is in the Western Cape in Cape Town, the only nuclear reactor in South Africa, has an installed capacity of 1,940 megawatts. It has two reactors, each producing the excess of 970 megawatts. And Koeberg Power Station also employs approximately 1,200 individuals directly, and it also indirectly employs 600 local jobs and an additional 2,000 jobs within the broader South African nuclear context, because they need to buy nuclear material, they need to get equipment to be serviced, they need to get equipment to be installed, they need to get nuclear spent fuel to be stored somewhere, they need expertise for people to come on site to provide certain expertise that they can't get from the staff that is employed. Contractors who do welding and electricians and all of those things, and trucking companies and materials handling contracts. Yeah, and so that's basically the impact. This is before we talk about the multiplier effect that they have on the South African economy as a whole. And then you look at the Kusile Power Station, which is a coal power station, and which up until today, the 23rd of June, is actually not complete. By the time when it is fully completed, it has an installed capacity of 4,800 megawatts, with 6 units, each producing 800 megawatts. And when complete, this particular power station will employ 10,000 direct employees. Guys, can you imagine that number? 10,000 employees being employed in one site. And Kusile Power Station is one of the biggest power stations that South Africa currently has. And the ANC has mismanaged the construction and the management of this power station, which is why to this day, more than 10 years later, it's still not complete. That's a story for another day that I'm going to touch on later. And so I would look in terms of where to build these power stations that I would build, which will be 2 large nuclear power stations. When I say large here, I'm talking about with regards to megawatt capacity. So one of the issues that I look at in this issue is to look at, I don't like nuclear power stations to be built in the coast because of the challenges that could come if there is any adverse weather or climate or adverse incidents, even though they are unlikely to happen in South Africa, like hurricanes or like tsunamis or earthquakes. So I don't like nuclear power stations to be on the coast, number one. Number two, I would also not put a nuclear power station in a place like Gauteng with its history of these deep mines that actually stretch throughout all of Gauteng, making Gauteng a seismic risk in terms of potential seismic events, whether natural or otherwise. And so putting a nuclear power station in a situation like that, I wouldn't advise it. And also number three, that is to say, I would also have to look at the issue of which provinces in South Africa has the highest unemployment rate. Because if you're looking at which province has the highest unemployment rate, that will determine to you in terms of where to put these places that are going to create so many of these thousands of jobs. And the number one province with the highest unemployment rate in South Africa is the Northwest, which has unemployment rate of 56% from Q1, quarter one into the 2025. And number two is the Eastern Cape with the unemployment rate of 49% at the first quarter of 2025. And number three is Mpumalanga with 49.3%, and KwaZulu Natal with I don't have the number. It's somewhere between 49, I think it's around 45%. Then you have Limpopo, which has 48%. Okay, so KZN must have something just between 49% and 48.9%, somewhere there. And then Free State, which has 44%. And there are some other factors that would go into where to put these power stations, because, for instance, even though Northwest has the highest unemployment rate, I wouldn't put a nuclear power station there because I would have other plans to build something else in the Northwest which can't be built elsewhere. And because of that, I'll talk into what will be built in the Northwest in the second video, which can't be built elsewhere because of its proximity to Namibia, Botswana, and Angola. But that's for another video that I'm going to do. So then what I would do, and Eastern Cape is already out because it's on the coast, and I don't like it to be on the coast. And also Limpopo would be out because of other projects that I would prefer to put in Limpopo, which I would rather not put, which I can't put elsewhere because of its proximity to Mozambique and to Zimbabwe. Okay, with that being said, I would actually build a nuclear power station in northern KZN with the power capacity, with a capacity of 5,000 megawatts. And when I say northern KZN, that would probably be maybe Newcastle, maybe Ladysmith, maybe even Bergville. Any of these towns in KZN that are not far from the Free State, not far from Gauteng, and also not far from the N3. And there's a reason for that. And then I'll put a second nuclear power station in northern Free State. So that would be also 5,000 megawatts. That would be, you see, when you are driving from Johannesburg past areas like Vereeniging into Sasolburg, and then you go into Free State, those small towns there just after Sasolburg going into the Free State, that is where I would put a second nuclear power station. I could even put it maybe around Harrismith actually, but any of those areas around that area, those are very good areas to put these high jobs complexes where people who can actually get jobs from them can come from either the Free State or KZN or Gauteng. It's central. And each of these power stations, for instance, the one in KZN, I mean, they'll probably be identical, will create 4,000 direct jobs upon completion and 8,000 indirect jobs upon completion. This is to mean when the project is complete and it's now functional and operational, the plant is functional and operational, 4,000 people would work on the site and 8,000 contractors would be servicing the site. That amounts to 12,000 jobs, and that exclude the multipliers. And also what I would like to include there is that during construction, the construction period, which I would limit to 5 years, 25,000 construction workers would receive jobs as part of the construction of the plant on the duration of the construction, which will last up to 5 years. And I say 5 years specifically because I would limit it to 5 years. And if the contractors are unable to commit to 5 years or they don't have the capacity to do it in 5 years, either stick to the timeline or get out. And so it will be a similar situation also with the plant in the Northern Free State. Similar capacity, 5,000 megawatts, 12,000 direct employees, 25,000 contractors, construction contractors, which means that just these two projects together will create around 24,000 jobs. recurring jobs. That is actually incredible. And these two projects, just these two projects, can add up to 0.4, maybe 0.5% of GDP growth when I include the multiplier effects of what the impact that they will have on the neighboring communities, villages, small towns, and the multiplier effect that they will have on the South African economy in whole. All the other small businesses that get to be built around these businesses, because they have to be serviced. People have to buy food, people have to print things, people have to do this and that, transportation, service industry, all kinds of accommodation, short-term, long-term accommodation that needs to be provided. There is a lot more in terms of the multiplier side of thing that gets to be, which might actually end up creating around roughly 30 to 35,000 jobs. That is incredible. And one of the things that I would have to insist on when it comes to this, when I'm saying they have to be completed in 5 years, is that I would, for these projects, waive the BEE requirements when it comes to bidding for the construction of the projects. But I would not waive the BEE requirements when it comes to the employment of workers going forward. Even in terms of the employment of workers for the contractors. So I wouldn't require that the contractors be majority owned by black people, because at this juncture, the most important thing is that these projects must be completed on time and under budget. And I don't want to hear anything about, so do you mean that black people are incompetent? No, that's not what I mean. We have had 30 years of BEE policies when it comes to building of billion-dollar projects that don't get finished on time by black construction companies and other black contractors. So I'm not doing any of that bullshit right now. And this has nothing to do with that black people are unable to do the job. Here people will actually get the job purely based on merit. If you are black and you can demonstrate merit that you can complete this job within design specs and within budget, within 5 years, and you are black owned, it's fine. If you are white owned, Indian owned, colored owned, whatever owned, and you can provide all of the expertise and the competencies that are needed to finish these projects within the budgets, and hopefully under budget, and hopefully way before the 5 years, and meet the design requirements, then you get the job. Because one of the problems that we have at Kusile and Modibi Power Station is that they failed to actually build a simple coal-powered power station within the design specs. And can you tell me who in their right mind is not able to design and build a coal power station within design specifications, where we're having millions of dollars being wasted because entire units were badly designed, or entire units were not designed based on the specifications. So I'm and the government does have that discretion to waive BE requirements for certain critical projects where, for instance, time is an essence, or things need to be delivered within a certain time frame or within a certain budget framework, where the most important thing there is not transformation goals, but the most important thing there is that this thing needs to be done on time. And on this particular project, I would not even mind getting foreign contractors to do this project. The Chinese, the Russians, the French, I don't mind. I don't give a rat's you know what. As long as those contractors are able to do it on time, within budget, and meet the design specifications of these reactors, Bob's your uncle. That's really, for me, what would be my primary concern. And I'm pretty certain there's South Africans who are sitting at home, unemployed, not knowing where they're gonna get their next meal, are really not concerned about all of your BE codes when they're sitting at home. Because all of these projects, whether they are built by entirely Chinese crew, once the project is done and completed, And I'm saying that it must be staffed afterwards by South Africans. No one gives a damn about who built it, as long as it's built within the time, within budget, and match the design specifications. And for me, that's really the most important thing. And I guarantee that these two projects, one in the Free State, one in Northern KZN, Northern Free State, Northern KZN, creating 24,000 direct jobs. And if you're looking at multiplier effects, up to 35,000 jobs, that would be such a game changer in our economy, in the lives of people. It would breathe such a life into the South African economy that people would actually start believing that actually things can happen. That's just the part one of energy build that I would engage in if yours truly were privileged to be in government in South Africa. Build these two 5,000 watts power stations, which collectively are 10,000 watts. And obviously 5,000 watts per power station, that would probably be 10 units each of, say, 5,000 divided by 10. And so you put it in such a way that it must run probably at around 4,000 watts or even a little just below that, so that you have the other excess capacity just for in cases of maintenance and other breakdown, so that when you are removing, say for instance, you remove 5,000 watts online and then you take it offline and then you take another 500 watts offline, you need to be able to still produce at the operational capacity while you are still maintaining the other ones that need to be maintained. So which is why I'm saying 5,000 watts, operational capacity maybe around 3.8, maybe 3.6 to 4,000 watts. That is enough to have enough excess capacity for cases of maintenance and unintended breakdowns like accidents and things like that happen, which I don't foresee would happen a lot in a situation where a plant is properly maintained. But also, even with that 5,000 watts of a nuclear power station, you might actually find that in some instances when there are problems with this old fleet of coal-powered power station, you might run it up to 5,000 watts in order for you to actually meet the other excess need that needs to be met. So let me know what you think. I'll do a second video that's going to tell you in terms of what is the second part of the energy build that I would go into. And this is going to be a series of 3 videos, which what I'm saying is that it will add up to 1% of economic growth to the South African economy. Cheers, folks. See you on the next one.